Five, four, three, two, one. Beers and Banter, episode 31. We've got Govs the Brewer back in the house. How is it March? Surviving the coronavirus and a little bit of footy. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Govs, welcome back to Beers and Banter.
Mate, thanks for having me. It's good to be back in the shed.
It is warm in here today.
That's all right. Good beer drinking weather.
Luckily, we do have some ice cold beers to get through, which I'm really looking forward to. I want to ask you how your summer was, but it's March. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's. It feels like it was over in a blink, but when we're in the middle of it, we certainly felt it. It was an incredible summer for us, our biggest ever, and we're still kind of gathering our feet from it.
I heard on ABC this morning that summer is now a month longer than it's supposed to be, from a weather point of view.
Oh, mate, as a brewer, I'm not too mad about that.
I'll bet. That's awesome.
Yeah, we definitely do like it when the sun comes out. It gets people nice and thirsty, and it's good beer drinking weather for us.
Well, let's crack one to get started, and then we might talk a little bit of footy.
Let's do it.
What do you want to get? What do you want to start with?
Let's start off with the Tropic.
Bit of Snoop Dogg.
So, I tried to bring a little bit of a mixed bag along with me today for you to try. So this first beer, I think would be a nice little quencher for us to get started on. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Thanks for coming back.
So this is our what we released as our summer sour.
Oh.
So sour beers are making a huge rise in the craft beer world. It's kind of the next big category after hoppy beers like pale ales and IPAs.
Yeah, that's nice.
And particularly for Australian summer, having a nice little tart, refreshing fruited ale is really good. So this one, when we say sour, it's not overly sour. It's not mouth puckeringly sour. It's just like designed to be nice and refreshing. We've got pineapple, ginger, and lemongrass in there as well. So it's almost like a cocktail in a beer.
It tastes really good, actually. You could almost add some rum to that or something, and it becomes like its own little cocktail.
Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with that, and we certainly know a few people have been experimenting with.
I like the ginger and
spicing it up a bit.
You could switch to that after a bit of a session, like if the beers are just,
it's perfect little cleanser. So if you're getting a bit stale on your beers, or you're just looking for something to switch it up, a sour is really good for that because it refreshes the palate and kind of just, it's nice and light. It's really easily digestible, so it kind of goes through and clears you out a little bit.
I guess I'm like that, where I can drink to a certain point, and then it's like I can't have another beer today.
Absolutely,
but you can have one of those after when you're starting to feel like
that. So we've
perfect.
been doing seasonal sours throughout the year. So this is our sour for summer, and then in autumn we're just about to release our autumn sour, and then coming into winter we get into some dark, rich red berries and things like that.
Looking forward to that. And that's still available at the moment?
It is still available. It is on the run out, so we it'll be at the tap room for probably the next couple of weeks, and then once she's gone, and then won't be around back till next summer. Get in
quick, folks. Seeing as though it's March, we are just around the corner from footy season. Have you seen any of the pre-season stuff?
I've been catching a little bit of it. I mean, for me, summer is not a great time for sitting on the couch watching footy.
Yeah.
I don't really catch too much of the news of sports, but I've definitely been following a little bit of it.
The good news, if you stop the season now, the Titans are looking really good.
That's how we like to get into it.
Yeah. They played really well on the weekend. So, trial match versus Brisbane up at Redcliffe. They were down 16-0, which was like, we've got the Titans of old. They then scored 28 unanswered points and basically put the Broncos to the sword. So it was a good match, good signs. We've still got a couple more of the big boppers to come in for round one in a week or so. But it looks all right. The effort seems there.
That's it. Getting some wins even in the preseason, it's a good thing to have.
Well, in the past when we lose in the preseason, you go, do you know what? It's just a trial.
Yeah.
Don't look into that. Now that we've had a good win, it's like, well, it's looking really good for the Titans.
Absolutely.
Whoops, that's me. How bad? Apologies.
We've got our first caller.
He'd freak if I put him on. So, rule number 1: put your phone on Do Not Disturb, Matt. It's been a while, clearly. And then in the nines, what was really impressive about our nines effort was we didn't win the whole thing, but the effort. So, like those 1% plays, like kick chase, and where they could really relax. They seem to be really putting in the effort. So, I think we're in for a better season than we did last year.
Here's hoping.
Absolutely gutted for Ryan James out for another season with the ACL. That's tragic. But the big fella Kevin Proctor named the on-field captain, and then Ryan James is going to stay on as the club captain. So I think good things for us in 2020. I think the new coach seems to have had a good effect. He's hoping. Out of that game, Jai Arrow was probably the big one. I was interested to see how he was going to go. Obviously, a lot of speculation because he's moving on to South next year. There's a lot of people that are a bit dirty and wanted to basically see him move on straight away. I think we're going to get 100% effort out of that guy all year, and the team will be better for it.
For sure.
I'm obviously biased. He's been in here and come on the pod with us, but he scored a great try on the weekend, and you can see that he's having a go. So I'm expecting good things there. You watch this week, it'll probably get announced. He's playing for South round 1.
Yeah, but we'll wait until that happens, eh?
Yeah, no, I think he's going to be good for us this season. Mitch Rain seems to have edged Nathan Peets out for the starting hooker spot too. He was pretty good, Mitch Rain, on Saturday night. So pretty electric out of dummy half, give us that bit of spark. But I'd expect both of those guys fit and in form would be good for the Titans. So fairly hopeful for a good year. News today, Captain's Challenge has been made official.
That's interesting change to the game.
So each captain or vice captain will get the ability to challenge a call on the field, but only at broken play. So you can't
stop the play.
Can't stop the play when they've made a break or something like that. But if they're packing a scrum or there's a penalty or a try or whatever, the captain's going to be able to make a challenge. They get one unsuccessful one per game. So as soon as if they challenge and it's not successful, then that's it. But if they're correct,
well, I mean, when you introduce these different challenges, it's great having access to the technology to be able to do this. It's just we've got to make sure that the rules support a good game. The last thing people want is stoppages.
Well, you don't want to turn into a 4-hour game of gridiron.
Exactly, or even like the VAR in soccer. It certainly plays its role, but sometimes it just feels like it's an interference, and it can really you can lose momentum, and for a spectator, it's not exactly exciting to watch.
No, I like it. I think that most punters, or a lot of punters, have been calling for it for a fair while.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it goes throughout the season. What we've seen in cricket is it doesn't always necessarily get rid of the howler because they use up their challenge, and then the refs still miss, or the umpire misses a call later in the match. But I think teams that'll use it smart might save it for those last 10 to 15 minutes when things are really on the line. If you're 40 in front, there's not really any point challenging the ref, is there?
No.
But one thing I did notice, so the trial games were streamed. So I was watching it through the titans.com.au website. And I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but you could hear the ref for the whole match. I found it really good that, you could hear the ref talking to each other, calling players offside and all that sort of, I don't know, it'd drive some people crazy, but I really enjoyed sort of hearing that inner.
Yeah, I imagine it would, bring a new perspective to the game. It's like, hearing what's actually going on the field.
Well, if you can hear the ref warning a player 3 times before they actually go, right,
exactly,
you're offside, well, then you can start to go, oh, geez, that was rough. Well, no,
he's warned him. Yeah,
three tackles in a row.
Absolutely,
got the warning. So I'm looking forward to. Hopefully, we get a bit more of that. Would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Redcliffe are one of the candidates to be the next team in the NRL. So apparently, there's 5 or 6 consortiums in Brisbane. Todd Greenberg's come out and said that Brisbane is most likely to be the next team. I'm staunchly against that.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah. I went for the Broncos as a kid. I'm a Queenslander. I love the Titans. I don't think another team in Queensland is the answer. I think they should go to Perth first, potentially even the Central Coast of New South Wales or the Central Queensland. I think bringing another team into Southeast Queensland is going to diminish our Titans market, the Broncos market, and I can't see it being fruitful for a whole lot of new fans for the NRL. I would have thought the expansion, the plan for expansion is to bring new fans into the game, but bringing another team into the NRL just gives more choice in a strong NRL market already.
I wonder if it will help. I wonder if it'll kind of create a local rivalry and get people excited about that.
Potentially, but people blow up and say, the Titans, they can't be successful. It's like, well, it's not because of the location. It's just it's hard to get established and build that winning culture. Dropping another team in Brisbane does not mean they're going to win straight away.
Absolutely not. And, you look at some of the teams, it took them decades to perform well.
Correct.
We as we advance, we forget our patience, and we forget what it's like to grind out for year on year and build a team and build a support network underneath it. And
everyone gets impatient with the Titans, but it took the Cowboys 20 years to win a grand
20
final.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, we forget that pretty quickly.
The Warriors haven't won one.
Yeah.
And, there's some other teams that have only won one in their time or in the truly national comp. So I think, the back of house seems to be going right at the Titans and the playing group's going in the right direction. I think we're in for some good years ahead, but I just hate to see them drop another team in Brisbane and then all of a sudden Brisbane and the Titans are now competing for those marketing dollars.
Absolutely.
The same players, same playing talent. So it's not like you're developing a new nursery. I don't think it does a lot to really combat AFL. I think if you go to Perth and you start a juniors program in Perth, all of a sudden the kids in Perth have got a decision to make. Well, am I going to play AFL or am I going to play NRL? Well, most of them are going to play AFL, but there's going to be a section of expats that are going to go, no, we're going to play NRL. Like they already get good crowds over there. Had the Nines over there. I'd rather that was the team, or even PNG.
Yeah.
Straight away, you'd have 8 million new followers. I know they'd already follow the NRL, but like, tell me a team that wouldn't have that'd have the most members surely if they came into the NRL.
Oh, for sure. And what a gnarly support crew they'd have.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see on the every second week a game in PNG. I don't know how the players would like it, but it'd be pretty cool. I think if it's going to be another team in Brisbane, I think Redcliffe, I don't mind that option, but it goes against what I think the NRL are trying to achieve, and that's 26 games a year at Suncorp. I would rather see it played at Redcliffe and really capture that Sunny Coast Redcliffe market, boutique stadium. I feel like there's some regret on the Gold Coast that they built a 28,000 seating stadium out at Robina. Probably should have been a 12 to 15,000 seat stadium in Broadbeach.
Absolutely.
And I think we'd
fill it every week.
We'd fill it every week. You'd be able to imagine being able to walk out of all the hotels in Broady and Surfers straight into the stadium, as opposed to trying to get people out to Robina. It's not the same experience.
No.
There's a reason the MCG's full all the time.
Yeah.
Suncorp, you walk straight out of Suncorp and into Caxton Street. Imagine if it was straight out of the Gold Coast and into the Oasis. That'd be, or into Cavill Ave. It'd be off the charts. So, but if it's going to be in Brisbane, I would have thought Redcliffe would have been the go. But I know that I think the teams out west will be pretty strong. They'll be hard to beat, in those expansion corridors out.
For sure.
In Ipswich, that'll be tough. But, we'll see what happens there. What do you reckon? What else you got there? I'm loving that, but I'm mindful that we've got a few to try there.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to crack into the cat wincher and we can talk about that?
I do want to talk about that. So, just to give the folks at home the backstory or where I'm coming from, I've been badgering Govs to come back in since I saw this story. Just leading into Christmas, one of my favourite sporting events of the year is the Sydney to Hobart. It's on my bucket list. I've got zero sailing experience other than when I'm on holidays and, the little resort cats that you get to have a go on. I've got no idea, but I'd love to do that race one day or at the bare minimum, I'd love to be on the harbour one year for the start. And when I saw that your logo was going to be on one of the sails and then you'd released a beer to go with it, I'm like, I got to hear this story. What's the go? How did this come
it
about?
was absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm glad you actually kept a 4-pack of it aside because we sold out in a couple of weeks.
I think I actually snuck into the brewery and bought your last 12 cans out of the fridge.
There you go.
So Burley.
It was a beer that kind of just fell into our lap. And when I say that, I don't mean it was complete luck. We have a tendency to attract these really cool little side adventures that we go on throughout Black Hops. It's kind of like our signature thing is not just running a brewery and making beer, but also kind of stepping aside and doing some cool shit in some different playing fields.
Yep.
So this beer came up through our new landlord up at BH2. So he owns the factory that we built our brewery in. He also started Riviera Motor Yachts back in the early 80s. So if you can cast your mind back to the 80s, like probably the biggest name in luxury motor yachts would be Riviera. So he went on to sell Riviera and started up Maritimo Racing Yachts.
Right, yes.
So he's a big part of like the Australian motor yacht scene. He's right into his sailing, as you can imagine. And as you know, one of his little side stories is to do with the Cat Wincher, which is the name of the beer and the name of the boat that was in the race. So Cat Wincher was a yacht that his father actually owned. It was originally built in 1904 in London in a brewery, would you imagine?
Ah, right.
Yeah, so it was brewed in a brewery, built in a brewery over there. I imagine back then, like the Coopers who made all the wooden kegs, they were probably also pretty handy at making yachts. So they're probably diverse there.
Pretty good at making a watertight wooden structure.
Yeah, so that was their thing. So I imagine they kind of diversified their skills across drinking beer and making boats.
Yep.
So the boat was sailed over to Sydney in the 50s, and it competed in its first Sydney to Hobart, I think, in 1957.
Ah, right.
So it's been in, I think, 5 or 6 Sydney to Hobarts in its lifetime. So this was owned by Bill Barrycotter's father.
Yeah.
Then the boat was handed on to Bill, and it kind of got lost in storage and disappeared for like a decade.
Yeah.
And about 10 years later, this boat shows up on a Gumtree ad in some lady's backyard in Sydney.
Down on the northern beaches or something?
Yeah,
was it?
completely like rotted out. Like this thing couldn't float if you tried. And someone recognised the boat and sent it through to Bill. And Bill's like, yeah, that's Cat Wincher. So he went down and acquired the boat back off this lady who had no idea how it ended up in her backyard. It was just one of those stories. So he brought the boat back up to the Gold Coast and spent the next better part of a decade restoring it. And as you can imagine, an incredible amount of money. But for him, this was very much a passion project. This boat was, his father's pride and joy.
Yep.
So he completely restored it from the ground up. Every inch of this boat was reverted to immaculate condition. And due to its history and its connection with the brewery in London and his connection with us as his new tenants, he approached us and said, hey, told us about the story about the boat and said, would you guys be interested in if I was to put black hops on the Spinnaker, because I'm racing it in the 2020 Sydney to Hobart.
And that would have taken you all of 3 seconds to.
We were just like, well, I mean, it was. What do you say to that other than, of course, fuck yes.
Yeah.
How do we do this? Like, it's we were kind of like, we don't have any money, like we can't afford this. Even we appreciate the offer, but that's completely out of our budget. And he said, no, you just send me through the logo, and I'll get the sail makers to get it done.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so we had a meeting with Bill and with some of the other senior executives from Maritimo, because they were very much involved in the rebuild of the boat. Plus, some of them were involved in the crewing and the story around the Sydney, the coming back to the Sydney to Hobart, and they were a little bit perplexed that he didn't want to put Maritimo on the sail. And for Bill, he's like, this is my passion project, not my work project.
Work,
yeah. So it was kind of important for him to separate those two. We did the only thing that we knew that we could to kind of honour that sort of offer.
Yeah.
And we made a beer for it. So we made it
good too.
So we made a beer of the same name called a Catwincher. It's a pale ale, and it's just designed to kind of replicate the easy, breezy, nice winds that we were hoping we'd get.
Yes.
Because the Sydney to Hobart can be a very torturous journey. It's highly regarded as one of the most challenging offshore sail races in the world.
I did start to follow it too, and I may or may not have put $1 or $2 on.
Yeah, I put a few bucks on it too.
Just because it firmed into actually one of the favourites to take overall honours because of the age of the boat.
Yes.
Well, I'm assuming. I don't know how that works.
With its handicap,
yeah.
It was actually second favourite to finish handicap honours, which is to win the race, because the boat was just so excellently restored. It was just sailing at such an incredible speed for its rating.
Yep.
And we met with the crew and the skipper, and they said, the conditions are looking good. If we can get that northerly wind coming out of the harbour, we could very easily win this race. They unfortunately got less wind than they'd hoped for.
Yeah, okay.
So they ended up winning their division in the vintage class, but unfortunately there just wasn't enough wind at the time to get them through to Hobart across first. But honestly, we were just excited to be part of it. So we flew down for the start of the race, and we got to sit there drinking tins at the headlands, watching this big black hop Spinnaker shoot up as the base. Yeah, as it went. And like for me personally, growing up, sailing was like my sport of choice. So as a teenager, I used to race like little 5-meter dinghies.
Yeah.
I was in the Navy cadets.
Yep.
As a young lad, and I didn't play too much footy, but I used to sail, and I used to travel around the country racing little sailing skiffs. So it was absolutely one of my bucket lists to do the Sydney to Hobart, and I feel like I've got to tick that somewhat vicariously through beer, which is pretty cool.
I don't know if there's anything more Australian than the Sydney to Hobart. I saw it. There's a few people online saying that it's a sport that's sort of disconnected from the average Aussie, but obviously because of where it's ended up with the the super maxis and that, like it's.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult for Australians to connect with such an expensive, luxurious sport.
Yeah,
it's not in our nature. However, like we've always been like strong players in that field, and I think that whole not being afraid to jump on a boat and sail it through some of the most dangerous seas. That's about as Australian as you can get.
I don't think there's anything more Australian than the Boxing Day Test and the
it's as long as I can remember.
Sydney to Hobart.
Boxing Day was you'd watch the cricket and the sailing.
Do you know what they did botch though? Was the coverage
of the Sydney to Hobart.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't actually watch it because I was there, but
so Channel 7 ended up with the cricket and the Boxing Day Test.
okay.
The cricket and the Sydney to Hobart. So normally, Channel 7 have got nothing else doing on Boxing Day, and they're normally be pumping up the boat race.
Yeah,
but you actually had to flick over to one of the other 7 channels
or something. Yeah,
yeah, which I thought was. I knew it because I went looking for it, but I did speak to a few other people that probably weren't as passionate about watching the start, but they're like, hey, yeah, I missed the start. Normally it'd be, it's all over Channel 7. So that was a shame, but yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So if he needs some ballast for next year,
I
know a guy.
definitely tried to get mine. I put my hand up as a reservist, but it's an incredibly. It wasn't just a race for the sake of it. They weren't just doing it because they were absolutely having a crack. So Michael, who was the skipper, he sailed. I think in the crew of 6, I think they had like over 50 Sydney to Hobarts under their belt, including several wins.
Yeah, okay.
So they definitely weren't taking it lightly. They were there to win the race. And Bill himself was actually hoping to crew down to Hobart. But unfortunately, like I think he's 80 or he's pushing 80.
Yeah,
and it's a pretty wild trip out there. She's the smallest boat in the fleet, so it doesn't take much of a wave to kind of start tipping that thing up and down.
Well, I potentially have the last can of Catwincher that's unopened in my esky.
Yeah, I'd be holding on to that. It'd be worth squillions.
So hit me up in the comments if you didn't get to try it. But I don't think I'll be parting with that. That could become part of the furniture, actually. I have enjoyed. Do you know what's been hard? I started with 12, and I've been trying to save them for this pod, but we didn't quite make it happen a couple of times. The next minute, I'm staring at my fridge, and that's all that was sitting in there at one point. I was like, wow. I only did a couple for the episode. So
it was such an awesome story to be a part of, even if only a small part of it. But we also really fell in love with the beer, so I imagine we'll be bringing that back at the first opportunity. So we'll be following the Cat Wincher story and seeing where she goes, and at any chance that we can rebrew this beer, we certainly will.
Very cool. I love the story. Even better beer. I reckon we'll have a crack at some. What else? What are we going next?
All right, maybe let's move on to the California Love.
There's definitely an R&B feel for some of the beers this year, or not?
Yeah, it's come out kind of by chance. However, I think beer and music just they kind of go really well together. I couldn't imagine brewing without listening to music. So there's definitely a huge influence of music that I've listened to growing up and music that I'm into that comes through in our beers.
So this is one of the sexy black cans too, the black top black can. I do like those.
Yeah, so when we do some really limited special stuff, we'll bring out the black lids. That'll kind of set it apart from the usual lineup. So this beer is our latest limited release. So we bring out a different limited release for every month of the year. So this one is our February.
Yep.
And this beer was originally brewed to kind of pay homage to our trip over to the States. We headed over a couple of years ago to get some inspiration for the new brewery. And we spent a lot of time in California and the West Coast. And, their traditional just West Coast IPAs that they're making over there are just incredible.
And are they West Coast because of where the ingredients are coming from, or
no? So well, partly, but it's more to do with the style in itself.
Yeah.
So the West Coast IPA, it's that older American style IPA where we're not talking hazies, we're talking clear, nice, strong, firm bitterness.
Yeah.
And then the hops are usually derived from like the Pacific Northwest, so a lot more citrus, pine, resinous. Some tropical fruit, but less about the fruit, more about the punch.
So in our previous episode that we did, we spoke about an IPA being, sort of the origins of that being an Indian pale ale, as in India was a colony of Britain, and when they were sending beer there, they had to sort of maybe punch up a bit, make them a bit stronger, just so they made the journey and that sort of thing. So, I think our listeners, I would assume, are mostly nufties like me and like slamming beers and don't really know a whole lot about them after that. But I do hope that we can, I do like to share a bit of that, sort of that bit of that backstory. I think it's good. There's a lot of different beers out there, and it's good to know what they mean when it's a West Coast IPA or it's an Indian pale ale.
Absolutely, I know it can get a little bit confusing and daunting with it feels like there's a new style coming out every month. That's why I try to tell people not to overthink it too much. Just have a crack.
It.
It's like the the most important question I can ask someone who's drinking my beer is, did you enjoy it?
I get that from my wife a lot. Just stop overthinking it.
Just do it.
Just do it. That's probably some good life advice. Don't overthink it. Something I did mean to ask you, was a real lapse on my part. Have you travelled overseas in the last 2 weeks?
I have not. I'm heading over next. I'm heading out of the country next week. I'm just not sure if I'll make it back.
One of my relos left the country yesterday, and I was like, that's not what I would be doing. But
I'm going to New Zealand, so I feel like...
Is that another country?
Yeah, it's not really another country. I can just catch the bus back, can't I?
It's bizarre. I don't want to make light of it because it's very serious, but I'm probably going to make light of it. The big advice that's come out today, wash your hands. That's mind-blowing. Who would have thought washing your hands was a good idea? Well,
yeah, I know.
Before you eat and after you've used the bathroom, wash your hands.
Yeah, well, I mean, I must just go to show how many people don't.
Now, I am a little bit OCD and probably wash my hands more than the most regular punters, but I feel like my life has been training me up until this point so that I'm ready for the coronavirus.
I think we'll survive it.
Yeah, it's not one of those things where I talk about this with a couple of people, is that I watch a lot of disaster movies. One of my favourite shows is The Walking Dead. I don't think we'll ever see zombies walking down the street. That you know, the undead. We'll never see that.
I think for me personally, that's like my secret fantasy.
Yeah.
I think I grew up on, like yourself, sounds like it. You know, zombie stories, zombie books. I've got books at home of like how to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm ready for it. I don't know how I'm going to survive like a traditional virus.
Well, I guess that's the point I was going to make, though, right? Is that I don't think we'll ever see the undead that, you know, guts hanging out, you know, got to brain them, otherwise they don't drop. But I do think a virus is as close as we're going to get to that scenario, in that it won't be, you know, hordes of superhumans coming down the street, but it's going to turn into people that have got it and people that don't. And then what I'm mindful of is that at any point in the next couple of weeks, our government could turn around and say, don't leave your house. So, interesting. I said this to my wife about a week and a half ago and said, hey, I know you're going to think I'm silly, but let's just buy a few extra groceries. So, she gets cranky at me because a couple of years ago, I do like to prep.
Yep.
And a couple of years ago, it was raining a little bit hard. And I was like, we need to prep, get some canned soup.
Yep.
And I bought all this canned soup, and it took us like 2 or 3 years to actually eat.
I mean, as long as you don't spend your life savings on canned soup, who's it really hurting?
So this time around, I'm trying to be a little bit more sensible. But there's things like toilet paper and that are already in low supply in the big shopping centres. So that's my advice to people: is don't go out and buy a year's worth of canned soup, but maybe make sure you've always got 2 weeks worth of toilet paper in the house.
Yeah, it's the last thing you want to get stuck without.
A little bit of extra rice.
Yeah.
Some canned tuna. If we lose power, we're in trouble. I don't have a generator or solar. So we're going to eat everything on the first day. But it's just, I think I find it interesting. I went to a developers conference on Friday that was supposed to be all about property development, and it turned into an update on the coronavirus because they're all watching, all the economists, all the you know.
Yeah, I mean, whether you think it's hype or if it's justified, the reality is it's affecting how we go about our lives.
Is it something that you guys factor in?
Absolutely. So we a lot of our equipment, like our tanks and things like that, they're all, whether they're made in China, they're at least prefabricated there. So I'm in daily conversations at the moment because we're looking at buying equipment.
Yeah, okay.
So up until, a few weeks ago, we thought, no worries, we'll place the order, it'll be here in 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
Now we don't know what to expect. While the conditions today are good, people are allowed to go to work, tomorrow that could just completely change.
Yeah, and I guess what's worrying them is that they're now starting to see cases that have no connection to China. So it's basically jumped countries. So the lady on the Gold Coast last week, she'd travelled to Iran. She'd not been to China, but she's come home with the virus. Italy has had a lot bigger outbreak there. And I don't think Australia's been stopping people from Italy from entering the country. So what's happened is that once you're in the EU, you can travel wherever you like without and basically unchecked.
Yeah, and I mean, even coming directly out of China, and Australian citizens have been able to travel free. They've just had to self-isolate.
Yeah.
And whether that they've got their incubation period wrong, we won't know until the cases start popping up. But I think like one of the big ones is, what about the Olympics?
I'm glad you brought that up because there's a couple of major sporting events that it could affect. Probably more imminent than that. The F1 next weekend in Melbourne. Ferrari have basically already asked the question and said, are we going to be allowed in the country? Because obviously their team's based in Italy.
True.
So they're like, well, what's going to happen when we get the customs in Australia? Are you going to let us in or not? And they want to know before they leave. So, I know, again, not a sport that all Australian punters connect with, but it's one I love. And it's, there's not many bigger circuses. You've sort of got F1, soccer, and the Olympics, and they're big money, big concept events. That'll be crazy if they start on the grid next week and there's no Ferrari. That'll be huge.
Yeah.
Or no Ferrari and no insert other team here, because they basically, if they had to travel through a country that's on the banned list on the way here, it's game over. They're not going to let them in. So that'll be really interesting. I did write in a footy season starts next weekend.
Yes.
Are we going to see round one of the NRL season with no people in the stands?
I certainly hope not.
So if you've watched these disaster movies that you and I grow up on, what happens? It starts out small. One guy coughs on another guy. And then you've got, so on the case of the Gold Coast, we've got a lady that travelled from Iran. She's felt fine, so didn't do anything wrong. From all reports, that this lady's done everything right. And she served 40 customers and then started to feel crook.
Mm.
We had a small event here on the weekend. Queen, 40,000 people.
Yep.
Say 2 people went to that event that had been, or 1 that had been infected at the salon. Next minute, 40,000 people potentially exposed. You can't track that. It's gone. Once it starts to hit big numbers, there's no point doing a ring around going, oh, were you at this place on that day? Like, it's game over because there is no way you're going to track the from there. So I will not be surprised. And people know that I love a beat up and I love a disaster movie, but I will not be surprised if like some sporting events are played in front of empty stadiums in the next couple of weeks for those reasons. But yeah, the Olympics is huge. That's because I saw that they're not talking about postponing it. If it doesn't run, it won't happen.
And I don't think it's ever been cancelled. It's been postponed. I think even during World War II, they ran it late, I think.
If I had a producer, I'd get him to Google that.
Yeah, I think it'll be...
I'll see what I can come up with here. Yeah, I don't even... Because they still ran the 1936 Olympics because Hitler was the guy at the... that was in Germany.
Yeah. So
that was pre-war. I wonder if they had a 1940 Olympics cancelled. I'm probably only going to get it. What years were the Olympics cancelled? It would have been better. So 1916, were cancelled. Both the Summer and Winter Olympics of 1940 and 1944 were cancelled.
Okay, there you go.
But
I mean, for
fairly
pretty good reasons.
If it was a version of the flu that cancelled that, that'd be interesting. Weird anomaly. The Spanish flu was 1920. Sorry, it's a weird timing. 2020, we got this flu outbreak.
And it didn't seem that long ago we had the swine flu, the bird flu, SARS, and all of that.
But the Spanish flu wiped out like millions.
Yes.
And if Timmy was here, Timmy, you let me down again, not being here. Timmy sent me a picture on I've lost my phone. Sent me a picture last week. There was some book written like 20 years ago that talks about, and it was like a science fiction, but it was called the Wuhan virus. Was the virus in the book?
Yes, I love it. I love conspiracies.
And it's like, how did that happen? Hang on, I'll tell you the book. This is not the right message thread. We've gone down a rabbit hole. We're losing people. But yeah, basically, it was started out as science fiction. Here it is. What's it called? The Eyes of Darkness. It's called. I'm gonna read you a section of the book. Published in 1981, so 39 years ago. In around 2020, a severe pneumonia-like illness will spread throughout the globe, attacking the lungs and the bronchial tubes and resisting all known treatments. They call the stuff Wuhan 400 because it was developed at the RDNA labs outside the city of Wuhan. And it was 400th viable strain of man-made microorganisms.
Oh, well.
So
I better get a copy of that book and find out how it ends.
I trust Timmy. He wouldn't have led me astray. He does love a conspiracy as much as I do. But is that not science fiction becoming science fact?
Absolutely.
Or is there a deeper conspiracy there in that this is part of some master plan?
Whoa.
Because there is a lab near Wuhan that develops this stuff.
No doubt, yeah.
And that's, I believe, is part of... I don't know. I should be way more educated on this, but I'm not. I'm just purely speculating.
It should be beers and banters and viruses.
Yeah. But isn't that part of... There's a dude in trouble that potentially maybe was a little bit lax at work and he's spread this coronavirus?
It adds up.
Good news for you guys, though. Corona sales are down.
Yes.
They say 35% of Americans won't touch the stuff at the moment because
yeah, well, I get it. I mean, you know, if you named your beer after a terrible disease, people probably wouldn't drink it. The fact that it's the other way around is probably really upsetting some of the people at Corona.
I have seen varying reports, actually, as to why sales are down. I think mostly the reason that beer companies' profits are down is because they're not selling any beer in China.
I think that has a lot to do with it, yeah. But I'm sure people wouldn't be drinking it because of the name. I know there'd be a deterrent if it was like, here, have an influenza ale. I'd be like, no, I'm good.
You make a good point. Here's some salmonella.
Yeah.
That's the latest offering.
Yeah.
Oh dear. We've gone off track. Have we got one more in there?
We've got a beer, and I think that beer might bring us back on track.
So the beers we've been drinking, they're all available.
Absolutely.
California
except
Love.
for the Cat Wincher.
Except for Cat Wincher.
There's one beer left.
I might put the last Cat Wincher on eBay.
Yes, I would.
Here we go. What do we got?
So the last beer here I've brought along today is our AAA. So it's an American amber ale. So it's to bring some malt back into the picture. Typically over summer and the warmer months, we're making paler, hoppier beers. And we reserve our dark malts for the cooler months. But in this case, we wanted to bring one back and kind of showcase an amber ale that's still relatively light, but it's got some of that nice malt punch.
And it's Recon series, so
it's part of our Recon series. So our Recon series is like all of our beers that are brewed on our pilot systems.
Yep.
They're typically only available from the tap room.
Yep.
In incredibly small volumes. We're talking like 5 to 10 cartons. It's a 1 4-pack per person kind of job. And they typically don't last more than a week or two.
So like the smoke screen that you had for us last
Absolutely,
time.
yeah.
I held on to one of them for so long. I loved it and then couldn't bring myself to drink it. So I waited. I can't remember who ended up getting the last can. Someone came around for a beer and I said, you got to have a go of this. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So yeah, this has got some of our like sweeter caramel malts in there. There's some really light chocolate notes as well, and almost like rye type spice character to it.
Ooh.
But then we've got our hop bitterness coming through and a nice pine hop aromas and flavors to finish it up.
And it's 5.2%.
5.2%. So yeah, it's a full strength, but it's not like the Cali Love at 7.2.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
I missed that. Oh, 2.1 standard drinks. Lucky I'm not driving. That is good. I really like that.
So yeah, like last time, I just wanted to bring a bit of a broad spectrum of the different styles of beer out there.
It has been noted that you're just punching out all different beers, and it's great. Like you guys have got something every week or two.
At least every week.
Yep.
We're close to 2 new beers a week at the moment. We do have the 2 tap rooms
Yep.
on the Gold Coast, and the motivation behind that is for our locals and our regulars at the tap room. What we want is every time that they come in, there's something new to try.
Try something else.
And if they don't get it that time, by the time they come back, it's gone. So it creates a little bit of excitement for them. They're not just coming in and it's the same 8 beers over and over again. And it also allows us as brewers to really experiment and try different things and collaborate with different people and experiment with different ingredients.
I tried to listen back to our last pod yesterday just to make sure we didn't cover old ground. I don't think we spoke about it last time you're in, but obviously one of the other big craft beers on the Gold Coast leading into Christmas got acquired by one of the giants. Has that been good for you guys? Because the last pod we did, we talked about how good it was that local breweries connecting with local people and that was really resonating with consumers and beer drinkers. And I saw a backlash online for that company and I was like, wow, that's... I think a lot of people were drinking that beer because of where it was brewed and who was brewing it and who owned it.
Absolutely, and that's something about craft beer, whether you subscribe to it or not. But there's an overwhelming sense of connection with the brand. It's as far as consumable products go, it's the one that people relate more to the brand than necessarily the product.
Yeah.
So people like to connect with the story. They can like to connect with the owners. And when breweries do sell to like the bigger guys, it typically doesn't go down too well with the vocal minority.
Yeah, okay.
So most people who drink their beer or our beer, they don't know. They didn't know who owned it then, and they don't know who owns it now. They drink it because they like it.
Yeah.
Whereas there's definitely a strong following who really care about ownership, particularly in craft beer. And so typically when you have one of these acquisitions, there will be a bit of an uproar against it. Me personally, I don't really have an opinion either way. If you look at it from a business perspective, they probably had a really good business plan and executed it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And for most small businesses, if you can get in 3 years and make that sort of coin, you got to be pretty happy about yourself. Whereas most breweries are probably not in it for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And care more about their community and their legacy and things like that.
So that's the question, Govs. But if they come knocking for 240 million, are you selling?
Of course. Are you kidding me? No. I mean, we're not trying to sell Black Ops. It's not on our to-do list.
Yeah.
If I was to say no to that, I think everyone would know I'm lying. It's like if, your prized possession, someone offered you 200 million. Are you kidding me? Of course you'd take it. It's not because I don't care about what I'm doing. It's that, I've got a family and kids.
You could go and keep brewing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. I could continue doing what I do.
Yeah.
However, it's not on our agenda.
No, I'm joking.
But yeah, whether it's good for us or not, sure, we kind of see some of the people that aren't happy about that decision come to us. But more so, it's like for us, it's a good reason because it shows how important craft beer is at the moment. In the beer community. If the big guys are actively trying to acquire craft breweries, it shows that we're making an impact on them.
So the stats, I believe, Asahi owns 50% of the Australian beer market. One company.
Yes. Typically, if you follow any of these big beer companies back, you end up with one of two companies.
Yeah.
So globally, there's 2 companies that make up 90% of the beer.
Yeah.
And they have been trying to merge for quite some time.
Yeah, righto.
Luckily in Australia, we've got a reasonably good ACCC, and they're very much involved in these mergers. and looking at diverging some of those businesses. But, it doesn't really change what we do as craft brewers.
It probably doesn't show from the paraphernalia I've got on the desk. I've got to get some Black Ops gear on here. Once upon a time, I only drank, Queensland's beer, but now if I'm not drinking Black Ops, dare I say,
I'm not offended. That's okay.
But if I'm not, I am still making that decision. I'd rather reach for a Cooper's because it's not owned by, if I'm going to drink a mainstream beer and not like a craft beer, I'm going to reach for a Cooper's because it's not owned by one of the multinationals.
Yeah, and that's a great decision if it makes you feel better.
Yeah,
and that's
maybe I'm.
But it's very typical of what we see in our industry. People don't care as passionately about other things that they buy as they do about craft beer, which is good for us. And it's, if we can instill that level of, supporting local, supporting independent businesses, doing our little bit, even if it's slowly changing the way people think about how they consume, then that's a good thing.
I don't want to, one more thing I want to ask you about before you go. You guys are involved in a TV show at the moment, My Way, is it called?
We are, yes. So, just another one of our fun little adventures that we find ourselves on.
Yeah.
So some of the people working on this new television program that's been launched this year just premiered last weekend on Sunday 5:30.
Yeah, yesterday. There was an episode yesterday.
Yes. Yep. So My Way, it's kind of a revamp on the old lifestyle TV shows. So if you think, Great Southeast and Great The Weekender and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's some of the old crew in that circle have got together with the producer, and they're trying to revamp that category a little bit. So rather than have your traditional Mike Whitney presenter go around to a bunch of local businesses, there is no presenter. They showcase different, typically Queensland businesses at the moment, and just get them to tell their story. So it's like if Channel 9 started doing Australian Story.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a little bit more exciting, but from the business's perspective. So,
and they're going to dig deep into following you guys around, or have you had
film crews? So they had a hit list of different types of businesses that they wanted to do. They were really hoping to do a brewery.
Yeah.
We were lucky to get chosen out of quite an incredible selection of craft breweries in southeast Queensland. Also because I think they were looking at doing a sailing story.
Ah, righto. Okay.
So I think once the producers found out about the Catwincher project that we did, it was a no-brainer. So they've done a story on us and they've done a story on the Catwincher boat, and those two stories are kind of been combining into the same episode.
Okay.
I think they still are filming Catwincher, or they might be just editing it.
Okay.
So our episode probably won't be for the next couple of weeks.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I missed yesterday's episode. I was really keen to see Dylan O'Donnell on the astronomer on that. He got tagged. We had a bit of a thing on our socials last week. Tag someone you'd like to see on the show, and Dylan got tagged. So I was interested to be keen to get him on the show. That sounds really cool. I'm looking forward to the episode.
Yeah, it was awesome. Lots of fun.
I really appreciate you coming in. I've been bugging the hell out of you, and I know you're a busy man. It's hot as hell in here. Appreciate you coming in.
No worries, mate.
Where can everyone find you? I know everyone at Black Ops.
At Black Ops on all the socials. You just punch our name into Google, you'll find our website. We also have a beer finder for people who aren't on the Gold Coast. It'll show you every outlet around the country where you'll find our beer.
And personally, at Govs the Brewer?
Govs the Brewer, that's where you'll find me. Lots of photos of my kids.
That's the way. You can see you're a burly local. I love it.
Yeah.
Folks, you can follow us at Beers and Banter. Thank you for your support. I would love you all to do me a favour. Please put a comment, a follow, a share, a like, a subscribe on any of the platforms. It really helps us with our organic reach. And hopefully this is the kickstart for 2020, and we'll be pumping out some pods each week. Coronavirus pending.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.